Denise Gitsham is with us now, Republican strategist, NewsNation political contributor. Your response to what the Attorney General was saying there about the facts of crime and he says the lack of necessity to bring in the National Guard.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Marnie. Look, what he did was exactly what Democrats have been doing to people like you with a story, which is to gaslight you, to tell you you shouldn't feel unsafe, Marnie, when you go to an NB game. You shouldn't feel unsafe because look at our stats. But the reality is people feel how they feel. And Leonard Ravenhill said it best. He said, a man or a woman with an experience is never at the mercy of a man or a woman with an argument, because what you feel and what you experience is real. It's valid. And even when he talks about the re-emergence of Portland, re-emerging from what? It's implicit, it's actually explicit and implicit in his argument that Portland was a disaster, and it still is, especially for those of us who don't feel safe. That's a reality. And if you look at what's happening on the screen right now, you're playing it. Americans aren't deaf, dumb, and blind. We understand what we're seeing. When you see guillotines, when you see people saying violent things and doxing and putting lasers in ICE agents, federal law enforcement agents' eyes, to prevent them, local and city officials, from enforcing federal law. That in and of itself is enough justification for invoking the Insurrection Act, which is precisely what President Trump has done to ensure that there's equal protection for all Americans under the law.
That said, this was a legal blow for the Trump administration to have this ruling. So what does the next step look like for the administration, not just in Portland, but in Chicago and LA and elsewhere?
Well, I think what the president and the White House needs to do is they need to stay the course and continue to point back to the facts, which is the law clearly states, I'm going to read it to you because I think it's important that people read it for themselves. But if you don't have time, I want you to hear what it says. In Title 10 of U.S. Code, Chapter 13, Section 252, which is where the Insurrection Act lives, it says when there's unlawful obstructions, assemblages, or rebellion that make it impracticable to enforce federal law, the president may use militia and armed forces to enforce the law or suppress the rebellion. But more importantly, Section 253, which is right after, says that when a state opposes or obstructs execution of the U.S. laws, which is what a sanctuary city does by definition, the president shall, that's an authoritative statement, shall take necessary measures, including militia or armed services, to suppress an insurrection or an unwillingness to enforce the law. So all I have to do is go back and stand on the law. They're on the right side of history. And I say this as a classic conservative who generally wants to support states' rights. But when states don't do their job to enforce the law and ensure that our federal law enforcement agents are protected, that our federal law is actually enforced, then this is wide open for interpretation. And honestly, the president is on the side of truth and the law. So there's no pushback that can actually be had that will withstand at the Supreme Court level. And I believe that the president and the White House will prevail in their arguments.
All right, Denise, thank you for your time this morning.